Hi, my teacher laughed when I said my black mother works at NASA, until she walked into the classroom. My name is Olivia Hayes, and I'm 12 years old. Today I want to share something with you. Something that happened to me recently. Something that changed my life. Something that made me cry, made me doubt myself, but in the end, made me stronger. It all began 3 weeks ago, when we moved to Meadowbrook, a small town where hardly anyone looks up at the stars. A town where I was just the new girl. The black girl with colorful braids and NASA t-shirts who talked about constellations. You know how hard it is to be the new student, right? Now imagine being the new student who doesn't look like anyone else in the classroom, who doesn't talk like anyone else in the classroom, who doesn't think like anyone else in the classroom. My mother is Dr. Maya Hayes. She's an astrophysicist and was recently named project leader of NASA's Artemis mission. She's developing propulsion systems that will take humans to the moon and later to Mars. She's been my hero for as long as I can remember, the smartest and bravest woman I've ever known. We had to move here because she was transferred to NASA's Glenn Research Center in Atlanta. Around the world, people know my mom. Her scientific work is a global reference in orbital physics. But here, no one knew who she was. No one knew who I was. Last week, during lunch, Ms. Porter, my science teacher, asked everyone to present their parents' jobs for career day. One by one, my classmates stood up. My dad is an accountant. My mom is a nurse. My dad works at the local bank. When my turn came, I stood up with confidence. I had prepared a folder with photos of my mother in space training suits, in meetings with astronauts, and standing beside a model of the lunar module. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. My mother is Dr. Maya Hayes, I began. She's an astrophysicist and was recently appointed project leader of NASA's Artemis mission. She's developing propulsion systems that will take humans to the moon and then to Mars. I smiled and showed the first photo. Here she is with the team That's when Ms. Porter interrupted me with a hand gesture. Olivia, she said in a tone that mixed condescension with amusement, I appreciate your creativity, but this is an exercise about real jobs, not fantasies. And then came that laugh. A laugh I won't forget. Not a nervous laugh, but a condescending one that cut through me like a sharp knife. I'm sure your mother has a very respectable job, she continued, but let's be realistic, Olivia. Black women don't lead missions at NASA. That's a little too ambitious, don't you think? Nervous laughter rippled through the classroom. Someone in the back whispered, liar. Now, why don't you tell us what your mother really does? Ms. Porter asked. I stood there, in front of 30 pairs of eyes staring at me. My small 12-year-old body was trembling, while tears threatened to fall. I clutched my folder to my chest like a shield. I'm not lying, I said softly. My mother really works at NASA. Ms. Porter sighed dramatically. Olivia, please sit down. We're not going to waste more class time. As I slowly walked back to my desk, I felt my cheeks burning with humiliation. The weight of the stares, the whispers, it all felt like it was crushing my spirit. It was the loneliest moment of my life. What no one knew, not even me, was that weeks earlier, the principal had invited my mother to give a surprise talk about scientific careers. And that day, by a twist of fate, was today. When Ms. Porter called on the next student, the classroom door opened, and there she was. My mother. Wearing her navy blue blazer over a t-shirt with the NASA logo, her hair braided elegantly, and a silver briefcase in her hand. The principal walked in right behind her. Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Porter, the principal said with a polite smile, but our special guest arrived a bit early for the talk. I'd like to introduce everyone to Dr. Maya Hayes, astrophysicist at NASA and leader of the Artemis project. The silence that followed was absolute. Ms. Porter turned pale, her face a mix of disbelief and horror. Her eyes darted from my mother to me and back again, as if trying to process what was happening. As for me, I couldn't contain the smile spreading across my face. As soon as our eyes met, my mother knew something was wrong. She knows my expression, that mix of relief and vindication that only appears when I've been unfairly accused of something. My mother smiled and greeted the class. It's a pleasure to meet you all, she said in a calm voice. I'm excited to talk about my work at NASA, and most of all, about the incredible future that awaits us in space exploration. Her gaze swept across the classroom until it found mine, immediately noticing my tearful eyes and flushed cheeks. Years of experience as a single mother had sharpened her intuition. She knew something was wrong. The atmosphere in the room was as dense as the atmospheric pressure on Venus, something she would ironically mention in her talk. Before I begin, my mother said, walking confidently to the center of the room, I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions about what we do at NASA, or more specifically, about the Artemis mission. She scanned the students' faces. Many avoided eye contact. Others shot quick glances at me. Ms. Porter cleared her throat, nervously adjusting her glasses. What a wonderful surprise, Dr. Hayes. We hadn't realized that, well, we were just talking about careers, and Olivia was telling us about you. Her voice faded at the end of the sentence, as fragile as a bubble about to burst. My mother nodded slowly, connecting the dots. Interesting. And what exactly did Olivia say about me? The teacher fell silent, her expression shifting between discomfort and growing embarrassment. My mother turned to the students. Could someone tell me what they learned today about my work? The question hung in the air like a spacecraft in orbit, inevitable, inescapable. A red-headed boy timidly raised his hand. The teacher said she was making up stories. She said that black women don't lead missions at NASA. The silence that followed was colder than the vacuum of space. I see, my mother said calmly, placing her briefcase on the desk. Well, it seems we'll have 2 lessons today. She opened the briefcase and began pulling out small models of spacecraft and a tablet. Principal Wilson, if you don't mind, I'd like Olivia to help me with the presentation. The principal nodded quickly, casting a sharp look at Ms. Porter. I stood up, my legs still trembling, but with a new light in my eyes. As I walked toward my mother, 2 students whispered to each other. Gentlemen, my mother said without looking directly at them, at NASA, we learned that whispers can be dangerous. In space modules, they can cause fatal distractions. Here, they only distract from learning. Please share your thoughts aloud. The boys froze, blushing deeply. My mother projected images onto the board. The first one showed her with the NASA administrator and other scientists, all standing in front of a mock-up of the Artemis propulsion system. This photo was taken 3 months ago, when I was officially named Director of Propulsion Systems, a position that apparently some believe I'm not qualified to hold. Ms. Porter seemed to shrink by the second, as if she wanted to disappear into a black hole. At NASA, my mother continued, we don't judge people by gender, skin color, or age. We judge them by their ability to solve problems. That's why my 12-year-old daughter already understands orbital physics concepts that intimidate many adults. I began explaining some of the models with growing confidence. This is the propulsion system my mother is developing. It uses a combination of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen that produces. For 20 minutes, my mother and I performed a choreography of knowledge, answering questions and demonstrating scientific principles. The initial tension melted away like morning fog under a radiant sun. At the end, my mother turned to Ms. Porter. Teacher, you believe in the importance of teaching correct scientific facts, right? Verifying hypotheses before reaching conclusions? Ms. Porter swallowed hard and nodded stiffly. Excellent, my mother replied, because healthy skepticism is vital in science. But we all know the difference between scientific skepticism and prejudice, don't we? One leads us to question and verify. The other leads us to assume and dismiss without proper investigation. Principal Wilson stepped forward. I believe we have much to discuss after this lesson, Ms. Porter. A meeting after class would be appropriate. She turned to my mother and to me. Thank you for this excellent presentation. I'm sure everyone learned valuable lessons today, some beyond the realm of space science. When the bell rang, the students remained seated. My mother began packing up her materials when a girl with pigtails raised her hand. Dr. Hayes, I want to be a scientist too, she said, but my aunt says it's too hard for people like us. What's your name? Zoe. Well, Zoe, your aunt is partly right. It is hard, but it's not impossible. The difference between hard and impossible is simply how willing you are to persist. She smiled. Olivia and I are going to start an astronomy club at this school. Everyone is welcome. Zoe's face lit up like a supernova. As the students began to disperse, Ms. Porter remained motionless, her face frozen in a mask of shame. Standing next to my mother, I felt a whirlwind of validation, relief, lingering pain, but also something new, a sense of power I had never experienced before. My mother turned to me once we were alone. "I'm proud of you," she said, "for telling the truth, even when no one believed you." I hugged my mother tightly. "How did you know what had happened?" I asked. She smiled softly. "Because I've been in your place, more times than I can count," she said. Her eyes held memories of similar battles. "And because I know that look on your face. It's the same one I see in the mirror every time someone doubts me, even now." In the days following my mother's presentation at school, the atmosphere was tense. News of the incident spread quickly through Meadowbrook, dividing opinions. Some parents supported Ms. Porter, arguing she had merely expressed a healthy skepticism. Others were outraged at how I had been treated. At the center of the storm, I tried to move forward, despite the stares and whispers that followed me through the hallways. On Friday, my mother received an email from Principal Wilson. The school had decided to organize a last-minute science fair, sparked by the students' newly awakened interest in astronomy. The principal invited my mother to serve as the lead judge, subtly indicating that it would be an important step in healing the wounds that had been opened. I saw it as the perfect opportunity to prove my knowledge, not just to Ms. Porter, but to the entire school. "I think I should do a project on ionic propulsion," I told my mother over dinner, my eyes shining with determination. "The one they're testing for Phase 3 of the mission." My mother raised her eyebrows. "That's advanced-level experimental technology. Are you sure?" "I'm sure," I replied, my tone leaving no room for doubt. "I want to show them I'm not just the daughter of a NASA scientist. I want them to see that I truly understand the work you do." All weekend, I worked tirelessly in our small apartment. The kitchen table disappeared beneath piles of notes, diagrams, and electronic parts. My mother watched with pride and concern, guiding me but letting me take the lead. On Tuesday, the day before the fair, I did a final test of my miniature ion thruster model. The tiny turbine spun, producing the subtle blue glow characteristic of the technology. "It works!" I shouted, hugging my mother tightly. For a moment, all the pain of the past week seemed to disappear. On the morning of the fair, the school gymnasium was filled with tables displaying baking soda volcanoes, styrofoam solar systems, and posters about photosynthesis. My project, placed discreetly in a corner, almost looked out of place, too professional, too technical. Zoe, who had become a constant ally, helped me fine-tune the last details. We exchanged nervous smiles. Ms. Porter walked among the tables, evaluating the projects with a neutral expression. When she approached my table, her face tensed slightly, but she maintained her professional composure. "And what is your project about, Olivia?" "Ionic propulsion for long-distance space travel," I answered firmly. "Specifically, the system NASA is developing for Phase 3 of the Artemis mission." The teacher nodded stiffly. "Well, that seems advanced." "It is," I confirmed, holding her gaze without flinching. "I can show you how it works." Without waiting for a response, I pressed the switch. The small engine began to spin, emitting a blue glow and a soft hum. Several nearby students approached, drawn by the spectacle. Ms. Porter watched silently, her expression unreadable. "This type of propulsion uses electricity to accelerate ions to extremely high speeds," I explained. My voice grew more confident as the students gathered around me. "It is more efficient than traditional chemical thrusters for long-distance missions." As I continued my explanation, my mother entered the gym along with Principal Wilson. She watched me from a distance, surrounded by a growing group of fascinated students, some of whom had laughed at me just weeks earlier. "Your daughter is extraordinary," the principal commented. "I believe we're witnessing the birth of a scientist." My presentation attracted an ever larger audience. Even teachers from other classes stopped to watch. My confidence grew with each question answered, with each concept explained, delivered with surprising clarity for a 12-year-old. When the time for the final judgment arrived, the jury members, including my mother, gathered to deliberate. The decision was quick and unanimous. When the principal stepped onto the small stage to announce the winners, the gym fell silent. Third place goes to Matthew Lin with his project on solar energy. Applause echoed as Matthew accepted his certificate. Second place goes to Zoe Washington with her study on potentially habitable exoplanets. Zoe blushed deeply, smiling at me as she walked up to the stage. And first place, the principal said, pausing dramatically, goes to Olivia Hayes with her functional model of ionic space propulsion. The gym erupted in applause. I stood still for a moment, as if I couldn't believe it. Then, with firm steps, I walked up to the stage to receive my prize, not just a certificate, but a small scholarship for a summer science program at the local observatory. Would you like to say a few words, Olivia? The principal asked, offering me the microphone. I hesitated for a moment, then took it. My eyes scanned the gym until they landed on Ms. Porter, who stood rigidly at the back of the room. This project isn't just about rockets or ions, I began, my voice slightly trembling. It's about believing in yourself when others don't. It's about persistence when someone tells you that you don't belong. I paused and took a deep breath. I've learned a lot about science from my mother. But in the last few days, I've learned something even more important, that no one can define my limits except me. My mother felt her eyes fill with tears as she clapped along with everyone else. Beside her, Principal Wilson whispered, I think today we all learned a lesson. After the ceremony, while I was surrounded by classmates eager to see my project again, Miss Porter approached my mother in a quiet corner. Dr. Hayes, she said softly, I'd like to apologize. Not just for what I said about you, but especially for what I did to Olivia. Her eyes were wet. I now realize I assumed things I never questioned. I hurt your daughter in a way that, well, that I myself was once hurt. My mother studied the teacher's face, seeing beyond the stiffness, recognizing something, the weariness of someone who had fought her own battles. You know, Ms. Porter, my mother replied calmly, in science, we learn that a well-understood mistake is almost as valuable as a correct result. What matters is what we do after. At the center of the gym, I continued explaining my project, my face illuminated not only by the soft blue glow of the thruster, but by something more, the light of self-knowledge, of newfound confidence, which, like the stars, would continue to shine even on the darkest nights. 3 months after the science fair, Riverside School had transformed. In the main hallway, a display case showcased my award-winning project along with photos from the ceremony. Beside it, a poster announced the Astronomy Club, which now had more than 30 students fascinated by the cosmos. One sunny afternoon, I was walking with Zoe and 2 classmates, discussing our project for the regional competition. What if we added a simulation, suggested Mark, a boy who, just months earlier, barely spoke to me. It could work, I replied. As we turned the corner, I stopped. Ms. Porter was organizing books in her cabinet. For a moment, we looked at each other, the past floating between us like an invisible nebula. To my surprise, the teacher smiled. I'm looking forward to seeing your project at regionals. I heard you're working on something about Mars? Yes, I nodded. A hydroponic system using Martian materials. Impressive. If you need help with the chemical analyses, my door is open. As the teacher walked away, Zoe nudged me. Who would have thought, huh? I shrugged. Mom says sometimes people just need time to recalibrate their orbits. That evening, the Meadowbrook Observatory was full of families with telescopes. At the center stood my mother in her NASA uniform, preparing to speak. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Meadowbrook's first annual stargazing night. The audience applauded enthusiastically, including Principal Wilson, several teachers, and even Ms. Porter. When I moved here with my daughter, my mother continued, I never imagined we'd be here today. I'm thrilled to announce that NASA, in collaboration with Riverside School, is launching the Rising Stars program, an initiative that will offer mentorship and opportunities to young people interested in STEM, with special focus on underrepresented groups. I stepped onto the stage with my mother. This program was born from a simple idea, I said with a confident voice. That no dream is too big, and no child should be discouraged from reaching for the stars, no matter their appearance or background. Later, Ms. Porter approached us. Dr. Hayes, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad you came, my mother replied kindly. Ms. Porter hesitated, then turned to me. My grandmother wanted to be an astronomer in the 1950s, when there were very few women in the field. She would have loved to see this. She would have loved to see you. I smiled, feeling an unexpected wave of empathy. She still can, through you, now. As the stars shone above Meadowbrook, my mother and I sat on a small hill. Zoe joined us, followed by other curious kids. How did you know you could do this? Asked an 8-year-old girl. Weren't you scared when they laughed at you? I was very scared, I admitted. But I learned something. The universe doesn't care who you are or what you look like. The laws of physics work the same for everyone. What matters is how you use your knowledge. At the end of the school year, Ms. Porter handed me an envelope. Open it when you're alone. That afternoon, I found an old photograph of a young black woman with a telescope, along with a note. Dear Olivia. This is my grandmother Eleonora. Her dream was to map the stars. Thanks to you, I've learned it's never too late to look up and learn to see again. Thank you for teaching me that true knowledge begins when we challenge our own limitations. I realized that the pain from that day in the classroom had transformed into something stronger, the certainty of my own worth, and the understanding that sometimes other people's prejudice is nothing more than a reflection of the stars they haven't yet learned to see. And here I am, telling you my story. People often ask me if it still hurts to remember that day, that laugh, those looks. The truth? Yes, it still hurts a little. The scars of prejudice rarely vanish completely. But the pain now comes with pride. Pride that I didn't give up. Pride that I showed who I really am. Pride that I inspired other children to pursue their dreams, no matter who tries to limit them. Since that day, I've spoken at 3 youth astronomy conferences. Our astronomy club keeps growing. And next year, I'll attend a special NASA summer program for young scientists. Some of the younger kids at school call me Astrogirl. I don't mind. In fact, I kind of like it. Miss Porter is now one of my biggest supporters. Last week, she showed me an old book she found in her grandmother's attic, an astronomy observation journal from 1953, handwritten. Some pages had stains that looked like dried tears. Others had beautiful drawings of constellations. She said she wanted me to have it. My mother taught me that the universe is vast and full of mysteries, but perhaps the greatest mystery is the human heart, how it can hold so much prejudice and yet so much capacity for change at the same time. If you're reading this and have ever felt like you don't belong, like your dreams are too big, like your skin, your gender, or your background are obstacles, I want you to know something. The universe is yours by right. The stars don't care who looks at them, they simply shine. The planets don't care who studies them, they simply orbit. The cosmos is waiting for all curious minds, not just a few. I know it can be hard when no one believes in you. I know how it hurts when people laugh at your dreams. But you need to know there are others like you out there. Others who look at the sky and wonder, what if? Others who face laughter and doubt, but keep looking up. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't. Don't let anyone define your limits. Because the only person who truly knows what you're capable of, is you. They might laugh today. They might doubt today. They might try to define your limits today. But tomorrow? Tomorrow, the stars will be yours. Olivia Hayes, 12 years old, future astrophysicist, current explorer of universes. P.S. My ion thruster worked so well that NASA asked to see it for real. Sometimes, life is more incredible than we can imagine.